Well, my best friend who lived across the road since I was 5 years old, he had joined the Hamilton Y Swim Club, and one night, and it's so clear at even that far back, he said, "Do you want to come and join swim club?" I said, "Let me ask my parents." They said yes, and that was the beginning of both swimming and then naturally into water polo. That's because of a friendship, and I happened to be outside when my friend was on his way to catch the bus to go downtown to Hamilton YMCA, and from there, I guess because I was relatively successful in my first real solo sport event, swimming, that when you're 11 and you're successful, you start to think, well, maybe this is the thing I can get into and appreciate my own life because of it. And I did. Actually, at the Y, when I was swimming competitively, they had a guy from England named Mr. Smith, I don't remember his first name, started a water polo program at the Y. And that's where I first learned it. But then going to the municipal pool on Sundays for a recreational swim, they always had water polo practice after, and we'd sit in the stands and watch. And we're quite impressed with the whole sport. And that led to going to the Jimmy Thompson pool, or the municipal pool, which became the Jimmy Thompson pool, and learning the sport. And once again, because of other teammates, were very successful. Yes, I didn't join the Hamilton Club until I was about 16 or 17. And in high school, with the municipal pool being the only one in the city, all schools sent kids there to learn how to swim from their elementary schools, and then in their high schools, they had the water polo program going. And although it's not a well-known sport, it was in Hamilton at the time amongst the 6 high schools that existed then. And it was interesting that water polo is not a major sport in most places, but it was in the Hamilton high school system, even from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and so on. There will be probably a couple of thousand fans there for the finals. And it was only junior boys and senior boys. So there's only basically 2 games. But since then, the entire high school program has expanded to the point where there were 13 senior boys high school teams, about 10 junior boys high school teams, about 6 or 7 if not more, senior girls teams and junior girls teams. So it's expanded from a two-team program at each school to 4 teams. I got into water polo at that time in the mid-50s, just after they had changed the rule from when there was a foul, the referee would blow the whistle and everybody in the pool had to stop and then go and put the ball into play. But when I started, you were allowed to swim even when there was a foul called, and only the person who the foul was committed on had to stop and pass the ball. They couldn't shoot. It was a heavier game then, I think, and then in the 60s, I think the Americans actually tried to, I think successfully, make the game more of a swimming game. The kids on the street in the East End of Hamilton, in a blue-collar community, and you know all about that, just naturally gravitated to sports. And that became the thing to be involved in and talk about. And we picked between Gordie Howe and Rocket Richard. You were on one side or the other, and I thought, oh, well, I guess I pick Gordie Howe. So he was my sports hero as a kid. And that led to just a lifelong love of the whole activity of sports. We even played shinny hockey at Mahoney Park. Of course, he was no star then, but he was a good hockey player. We were on the same ice together before he developed into an NHL star. And that's kind of a fun memory. Well, first of all, I was refereeing high school water polo prior to that, right after I graduated in '63. But I never thought of it other than kind of a recreational thing to do. But knowing that the end of my career as a player was coming, and of course the end was coming for me and the beginning was coming for you, I thought, do I stay in the sport or do I leave and say, thank you very much, it was fun? And I decided, and this is a true reason, I liked the guys that were playing water polo that were coming up. That's people like yourself, Rick Pugliese, George Steplock, Tomlinson, and so on. And Robert Thompson was involved, and he and I were players together. And I thought administration is something I'm not interested in. Coaching was going to occupy too much time, and I thought officiating seems to be the right fit for me. And it turned from something that was recreational into kind of an obsession to do well in that aspect of the game, all because I like the guys in the social group and of water polo players in Hamilton. I think being a person who evaluates themselves honestly, self-critical, and listen to people who are your mentors, not only other referee critics or evaluators, but players and the coaches. And don't be too sensitive. At least get over it when you get criticized. And I think that self-evaluation is hugely important. Sure, it is interesting. I was refereeing a pre-Olympic tournament in Quebec City. Man Markovitz was the head coach of the Mexican team. And it was Mexico versus Cuba. And it was not really a meaningful game, but I was trying to establish myself as a credible international referee. So when the rough stuff started, I kind of let it go in the game. And it was a huge mistake because it turned into a bit of a Donnybrook, not a fight, but a very rough game. And Kalman Markovitz came up to me after the game as the head coach of Mexico. And I don't mean to demean the language at all, but he spoke in a broken English from Hungarian. And he came up to me and said, "It is better for water polo. You never put this whistle on again." I was devastated. It was heartbreaking for me. Fortunately, he was compelled to apologize to me later for that. And I had let things go and learned from there on, you never let things go in a water polo game, no matter how boring or simple it might be, because you're going to run into trouble later. So be tough early, and that was a mainstay of that experience. I was working night shift at Dofasco as a machinist. I guess it was about 1966, 67. I got my arm caught because I did something that I wasn't supposed to do, wearing a long sleeve shirt, working on a machine. It was a sweater, and my arm got caught in the turning spindle on a lathe. It wrapped my arm around the lathe 1.5 times, but I managed to shut the machine off with my left hand, and had to unwrap my arm and get a cast. I was in a cast for 9 weeks, and it turned out to be okay. But we were going for Canadian championships at the time, so it was like February, and we were training for the championships in the spring. And I'd go to practice anyway, and had my arm above the water in a plastic bag with tape around it and treading water in the deep end for the same reason we all trained for, only I had to keep my arm up. And some of the young guys, I don't remember who, were impressed. They thought, wow, look at this guy. He's a veteran, and he's in here with a broken arm training. We who have it easy and have no problem have got to use that as an example. And I thought that was great. It was great that you could see right away that you had an impact, despite not knowing the story about the kids' feelings until well after. But once again, it influenced a person in the sport.